What's going on, fragrance family? It's your man Gator, better known as the Novice Nose out here in these fragrance streets. Man, it has been a long day, man. I got up early, had a lot of craziness going on at work. It was a tiring day, man. I had my mind set on getting to the house, kicking my feet up with my favorite adult beverage, and just kind of like, love my nail. And just kind of, checking out some TV with the wife, man. And then I thought about the fact that I really needed to talk about, get this review out on this particular fragrance that I tested today, just so the thoughts of it are fresh in my head and so they won't be lost to the sands of time here. Get the thoughts out while they're still fresh. So the fragrance in question is this one. Now, before I even get into the clone fragrance, let me tell you a little bit about the fragrance that it's inspired by. Now, the fragrance that it's inspired by is a fragrance called Blue Talisman by Nahilo, I believe it's pronounced actually. So Blue Talisman, and I know if you've been bumping around a lot of channels on YouTube recently, you've heard that name uttered many times. It's like held in super high esteem and is put on a pedestal as being like this magnificent fragrance. To me, it's okay. I gotta respect the perfumery on it. I gotta respect the art of that particular fragrance. I think it is well crafted, well blended. It's just, to me, it's not the fragrance that I would get super excited about. I mean, it's decent though. I mean, I got like and shout out to my boy Red, man, getting me a 10 milliliter decant of the fragrance, man, and allowing me to kind of play with it about 6 months or so ago, just to kind of see how I felt about it, and I thought it was cool. I thought it was okay, man. But like I said, everybody holds it in such high esteem in Fragcom. So when I saw this particular fragrance out there, and I saw what it was, cloning, which was the Blue Talisman, I said, well, let me take a look at it here and see, if it's a good clone of the fragrance at least. Because while Blue Talisman to me was a strong like, but not a love, it definitely would not have been a purchase for $400, which is what Blue Talisman's going for. This one was $40. So let's take a look at it and see, how close it is to the OG. Now, the fragrance is this one. This is Fragrance World's Taj 2. Now, that was the other reason I decided to kind of check it out, because Fragrance World does some great work. Frenchavenue, Fragrance World, they actually have put out some bangers this year as far as inspired by fragrances. This is the Taj 2. Let me show the box a little bit here. That light's gonna get really messy, but this is the way it opens. I had to show some boxes. I just show you guys because I like the way that they open. I like the way that they present, and this is one of them right here. So this is the fragrance itself. This is Taj 2. Let me see if I can get it. There we go. From Fragrance World. This is a nice bottle, man. It's not a heavy glass. It seems like a thinner glass, but the presentation is still great on this particular fragrance. So let me get a little bit of a spray here so you can see what this atomizer looks like. It's a decent atomizer on here too. It gives a nice even distribution of the fragrance on here. And full disclosure, I actually have had one of the decants. I was making a decant to send to one of my partners here, so I'll use that one, and I'll just refill it later. Of the original, the Blue Talisman here. So, like I said, I've been doing some testing on it for the last week, and I've been doing a little bit of the side-by-side comparison on the fragrances, and also just wearing this out in the wild solo. And the first thing you notice, especially on the side-by-side with this particular fragrance, is that you do get a little bit of an alcohol blast at the top of this particular fragrance. Now, that's kind of to be expected, especially when you first start, messing with the fragrance from Fragrance World. They do have a little bit of alcohol blast. That usually goes away after a little bit of maturation, though, of the fragrance. After maybe 10 sprays or so, you don't get that alcohol blast nearly as much when you start using the fragrance. But the second thing that you notice, especially when you do the side by side, is that the OG Blue Talisman is so much richer. It's got a beautiful fruit blend in there, and I think it's using pineapple, mango, and actually let me do a little quick look here. So the top notes of the Ex Nihilo, or Next Nihilo, Blue Talisman, are pear, bergamot, mandarin orange, and ginger. The middle notes on there are orange blossom and Georgie wood, and then the base notes are the amberfix, the musk, the akagilla wood, and cedar. They don't have a fragrantica page for this one just yet, but the notes are everywhere on this thing, as far as like online, the way they're describing it. But I can tell you that this particular fragrance, the Taj 2, it leans more into the lemony citrus side of the fruit blend. I don't pick up really any like real like mango-ish orange out of this one like I pick up in the OG. Now I don't think the OG has mango in it, but it does have that bergamot. It's got a deeper type of citrus blend in there, and it's a lot smoother than this one. This one leans, like I said, heavier into the lemony type of side of citrus. So the fruit blends are completely different when you spray these particular these two side by side. I will say that the OG Blue Talisman, in that initial dry down in the first 5 minutes or so, it smells a lot richer. It is airy, but I think a lot of that comes from the musk and the amberfix that are in there. And what those two chemicals do in the OG is they're kind of pushing out and they're projecting a lot of that fruit blend that you're getting in the orange blossom. So you're getting a little bit of the floral, but you're getting mostly the fruit blend in there, and it's getting pushed out by that amberfix. And so it does have this pleasant sillage that kind of comes through. It's kind of light, but it's definitely there, and it's a high quality. It smells really good in the air. This one, on the other hand, this one feels really wispy. There's not the same depth with this particular fragrance. When you spray it on, it just kind of sits close to the skin. It does project a little bit initially, and then within the first 20 to 30 minutes it kind of starts to kind of settle to get a little closer into the skin. A lot of it still feels really wispy and really synthetic, to be completely honest. That is the other thing about the OG compared to this one. Blue Talisman does not feel nearly as synthetic, but it does feel a little bit more natural, a lot more natural than this one. This one actually feels a lot more synthetic as you go into the dry down on this particular fragrance. Now I will say, once you get into like the 45-minute to an hour mark, the two fragrances, the OG Blue Talisman and the Taj 2, get very similar. Like it becomes a little bit more difficult to tell them apart, and I think it's because some of the fruit blend on the OG kind of dissipates by that time, and the Taj, it's still there a little bit, but it's kind of dissipating too. So it's starting to get into the core notes, the orange blossom and the musk and things like that. So when it starts to get into that range, even though this one is still a little bit more synthetic, it's definitely harder to tell the difference between the two. I mean, to the point to where once it gets about an hour and a half to 2 hours in, you really start to, it becomes almost indistinguishable. I mean, you can tell that the Taj 2 is a little bit more synthetic, but not by a whole lot. And I think that's where this particular fragrance actually does begin to shine a little bit, is, when it gets into that, hour and a half to 2 hour mark. That's when it really starts to resemble the OG in that particular part of the progression of that fragrance. When you get into that 2 to 3 hour mark, you start to really pick up like a a dried synthetic type of wood feel on this particular fragrance. So I think that all comes down to quality of the chemicals that are being used, to be completely honest. Now, I've worn it 3 times. The first time was a compare and contrast with the OG. So I was picking up a lot of the differences between the two as far as the wispiness, as far as the performance and all that. The second time I wore it on its own. And when I wore it on its own, I noticed that it did feel a little bit closer to the Blue Talisman OG. So I was like, okay, well, maybe this one needs to maturate. Maybe it needs some time to kind of sit in the drawer and chill. The third time I wore it, I definitely was able to tell that this fragrance was starting to get closer to the OG fragrance. So I really believe that over time, now the fruit blend, you're not going to be able to fix that. I think that this is what it is. The fruit blend on here is going to be more lemony than it is on the Blue Talisman. The Blue Talisman's fruit blend is going to be richer and more diverse than it will be on the Taj 2. However, I think that as far as performance goes, I think a little bit of that wispiness and all that can be eliminated with a little bit of maturation on this particular fragrance. I would give it about a month or so in maturation to see what it does. I think that as a wear on its own, it did come across to me as a little bit fresher than the OG Blue Talisman, and a lot of that is because the chemicals are a little bit cheaper, right? So some of the things that they're using in here are going to just lean towards being a fresher wear, and it's not necessarily because they're making it fresher, it's because the photochemicals are cheaper and it's less deep. But sometimes the depth of a fragrance can kind of degrade the freshness of a fragrance sometimes, and I think in this particular scenario, the fact that it's not as deep actually helps it to feel a little bit fresher than the OG does. I'm interested in seeing, and I'm going to revisit this one after about a month or so. I'm going to throw this in maturation and see what it does, man. Performance as it comes out of the box is I get about 6 hours out of it. On skin, on clothing, I got about a good 8 to 10 hours. The next day when I pull my shirt out, I didn't smell it anymore, so it does last a little while. It does give a similar airy type of feel to the original, but like I said, if you're looking for like a duplication of the fruit blend from the original on this one, you won't get it here. But I don't think it's a bad investment, especially when you consider that the original Blue Talisman's running around $400 for that particular fragrance. This one is around $40 right now on Fragrance Buy. So as I told you before, I'm not the biggest fan of Blue Talisman, so I'm definitely not going to pay $400 for the DNA. But if I can find that similar DNA or something that kind of gets me in the same wheelhouse and I'm paying $40 for it, then I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer to pull the trigger on it. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this in maturation, see what it does for about a month, and I'll probably get on here and revisit it with you guys and see how it has held up and how the maturation process has changed this. That's all I got for this one today, guys. Have you put your nose on it? If you have, make sure you put it in the comments. Let me know what you thought about it. And of course, or do you even like Blue Talisman? Like I said, I'm one of the few that is like okay with Blue Talisman, but it's not my favorite fragrance in the world. But there's a lot of people who are fanboys for it. So, hey, to each his own, man. Anyway, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and of course, share this video with somebody you know that loves fragrances. That's all I got for you guys today. Peace out.